This keyboard may look ordinary, but watch and see what happens when I push this one key. You see, this is so much more than just a keyboard. And that's just one of the things this keyboard can do that yours can't. You can't buy a keyboard like this one. I had to build it myself. And in this video, I'll show you exactly how. But before I can tell you how I ended up here, we need to look at where it all started. This is what I was working with, the cheapest supermarket keyboard I could find. It was only supposed to be temporary, but that was 3 years ago. Some of the keys have fallen off, and it feels horribly cheap and clunky to type on. And it just doesn't look right on my desk. But it works. Well, mostly. So I lived with it. Though I really do need a new keyboard. And while I was looking for one, I realised I had no idea just how many keyboards there are. Every size, and almost every shape you can imagine. Some of them were genuinely weird, but I knew just what I wanted. Mechanical switches, so it feels satisfying to type on. Compact, none of those keys you never touch. Aesthetic, a colour scheme that will match my desk. Ergonomic, comfortable to type on with less strain on my fingers. Functional, keys to control volume, mute, play, pause media, and it couldn't cost a fortune. That's not a crazy list. Plenty of keyboards have 2 or 3 of these. Some even have 4, but I couldn't find a single keyboard that did everything I needed. So I set about designing one that did. I've never designed a keyboard before, and somewhere in the planning I realised there was something more I could do with it, something I've never seen a keyboard do. But before I could figure that out, I needed to design my layout. Your typical keyboard layout is big, covered in keys you almost never press. Every one of those is an extra cost in switches and materials. So those can go. And because I'll be using this all day, it needed to be ergonomic. The usual staggered rows makes your fingers stretch sideways, a movement they're not really built for. Fingers are far better moving up and down than side to side. So I adjusted the layout so the columns are lined up straight. I also wanted more functionality, a single key to copy instead of mashing 2 at once. Media keys, play, pause, mute, but on a board this compact, there's barely room for the keys you already need, let alone dedicated ones for all these extras. And that's when I noticed the spacebar. Have you ever wondered why it's so long? If I shrank it down, I could fit 2 more keys in either side. And this is where I had the brainwave. I've been thinking about what I wanted those keys to control, media, volume, brightness, while I was sat there working in the dark. And I thought, if I've got a key that can change the brightness on my screen, wouldn't it be great if I could change the actual lights in the room? And then I wouldn't have to get up, walk over to the switch on the wall and turn them on. Why couldn't my keyboard control my smart home? Implementing it was not going to be simple, but not impossible. But for now I had my layout, which meant I could start designing the actual parts. And it turns out keyboard design is simpler than I realised. You just need a microcontroller, a brain, wired up to each key. Wiring up 60 plus keys to a single controller, you need a huge number of pins. So instead, the keys are laid out in a grid, rows and columns. Press any key and it will light up the row and the column it's on. The controller can see which row and column activated, and it knows exactly which key you hit, which means your 60 plus keys only needs a handful of pins, and so your microcontroller doesn't have to be massive. I was able to import my layout directly into my PCB design software. All the switch positions were already mapped out. I just had to draw in the tracks to join everything up. But the last thing I needed to figure out was where the microcontroller would go. Wherever I put it, it would stick out and ruin that compact look that I'd designed. So there really was only one place for it, underneath. I could fix a second board just for the microcontroller joined to the main one. And the very last thing I needed to do was to cut out these 4 notches from the corners of the PCB. I'll come back to why later. And that's my PCB designed. I just needed somebody to make it. I've ordered PCBs from a number of different companies now, and for the price and quality, JLC have been one of the best I've used. Which is why when they offered to sponsor this video, I was happy to say yes. The PCBs I've ordered are the standard rigid ones, but JLC have so many different options, like flexible PCBs. These boards actually bend, which opens up all the compact, awkward shaped projects a rigid PCB can't. They start at just $2, and with the coupon I've linked below, you'll get $10 off your first order. A few days later, my PCBs arrived, and it was so satisfying to see my design made a reality. With my PCBs in hand, it was time to assemble. First, I needed to solder the diodes. One for every key. These little things matter more than they look. These diodes will prevent multiple keys registering when a key is touched. The next item to solder in are the hot swap sockets. Again, I need one for every key, and they allow me to connect the switch. And finally, I solder in my headers to transfer the connections to the small board with the microcontroller. And now with that all soldered into place, I can install my switches. But here's the thing. There are hundreds of switches out there and they each feel completely different to type on. And the hot swaps mean I can just push the switches straight in to install them. And if I ever want a different feel, I can just pull them out and drop new ones straight in, no tools. I decided to go with these tactile ones. You feel a little bit of resistance as you press each one, so you get a satisfying feedback on every key press. Though there's one thing I haven't accounted for. A normal sized keycap works just fine with these switches. But any larger key, like a spacebar, if you press it off center, you see it pulls off to the side and the switch doesn't register the press. The fix is one of these, a stabiliser. It clips across the larger keys to provide support at the edges to stop them from tipping. But to install these, I need a switch plate, a thin metal sheet that sits above the PCB. It does two jobs. It allows me to mount the stabilisers, but it also stiffens up the whole keyboard, so it feels solid to type on. So I designed one. I already knew where my switches went, so it's just a case of cutting out a square for each one. Then I added a rectangle for each stabiliser. All I needed was the outline and manufactured, and then I had it CNC machined out of aluminium. And here was my completed switch plate. The switches drop in perfectly. The stabilisers though, wouldn't quite fit. You see, when I looked closer, I realised each stabiliser has this little tab on the side to help it hold into place. But I hadn't allowed for that when I measured them up and designed the cutout in the switch plate. So I had two options: get another switch plate manufactured, which isn't cheap, or file it off. It wouldn't take much to remove, and they fit perfectly without them. So now I have my PCB, my microcontroller and my switches all assembled. It just needs a case. So I designed one and had it 3D printed. And it has these supports to hold the PCB at the perfect angle for typing. I dropped in some threaded inserts so I could screw the case together. And remember those notches I cut out of the PCB? These allow me to slot the case over, leaving room for the screws. And the whole thing screws together from underneath. And with the case in place, it almost looks like a real keyboard. The last thing it needed is keycaps. But these weren't as easy as they usually are. Of course, when you shrink the spacebar down, you break compatibility with 90% of the basic keycap sets out there. They all assume you want one standard size spacebar, whereas I needed a smaller one. Though there was a surprising number of full keycap sets out there that includes all the extra keys, including a smaller spacebar. And from those options, I managed to find the perfect keycap set for me, with white letter keys and black function keys. And so now it's just a case of pressing each one into place. And with that, my keyboard finally looked complete. Yet it wasn't. I still needed to program it so it would function as a real keyboard. I flashed the firmware to the microcontroller using ZMK, an open source keyboard project. I then wrote my key map with some simple code, which tells the microcontroller which key on the keyboard each switch represents. And with the firmware programmed, I could finally test it. I loaded up this tool which would light each key on the keyboard up when it registered the key was pressed. Looking good. The I key doesn't seem to work. So every key on the keyboard is working perfectly, except this one. For some reason, I is not being recognised. So let's open the keyboard back up and see what's happened. Ah, this is the I key. It looks like it hasn't been soldered. I must have missed this one. I'll solder it up and see if that fixes it. Alright, that works. Finally, we have a working keyboard. And there it is, compact, clean, every key where I want it. And it finally matches the desk it sits on. So how do we make a keyboard controller blind? Well, these two keys either side of the spacebar are different from all the others. A normal key will send a letter or a number. These keys, however, don't. They send a signal that means nothing to a Word document, your web browser, or your media player. But it means something to my smart home. Because the keyboard is only half of what's happening. If it's sending a signal, something has to be listening. And that something is this, my Home Assistant hub, a small computer that runs my entire smart home. When it hears the signal from the keyboard, it runs through a list of commands. Whatever I tell it, to turn off lights, to play a song on the living room speakers, or open the blind. And that's the whole trick. The keyboard sends a signal, and Home Assistant makes the house react. Better still, I can have it react differently depending on the time of day. At sunrise, a tap on the key opens the blind and turns off the light. But after sunset, a tap on that same key closes the blind and brings up the lights. And this is exactly what I showed you right at the start. But what I can also do is hold the key instead of tapping it. And when it's held, I can have the keyboard send a completely different signal. And that can translate into a whole separate list of actions that Home Assistant performs. So one long press of the key, and I can have Home Assistant shut down everything. Close all the blinds, turn off all the lights in my whole house, every gadget powered off. And so, at the end of the day, I can just go to bed, without having to wander the whole house to double check everything's off. These two keys and this Home Assistant trick means it elevates this keyboard into a work powerhouse. It helps me to keep my focus on what I'm doing and means I never have to leave my desk. Not bad for something I've built myself.